move that into the page society,
Right.
instead of the workforce, but the page society and the page turner. So how do you see that working within the society and the, how many, 350, 500, how many?
Almost 400 members.
Almost 400 members. Yeah, how's that working?
Well, let's come back a step. Like 2 years ago, the Society published the paper on the authentic enterprise.
Right.
And one of the things that it talked about, that paper talked about, was the change that was sweeping the world around the empowerment of dialogue through new technological tools. And that has profound implications for the profession. In part to practice what we preach, even though we're not necessarily the demographic that's most comfortable with social media tools, we started a blog. And many of our members now, increasing number of members, are very active in their own blogs and their own Facebook pages and Twitter streams and so on. So it's an opportunity inside the society for members to engage in dialogue about what's happening in the world, in the profession, and aspects that are important from a thought leadership point of view. The sorts of subjects that have been covered under the authentic enterprise, globalization, and then ethics. Most recently, a paper that a vigorous and vibrant conversation around ethics in the inside business and inside the profession. So. Has it been? I think in reality, we would liked to have seen a more rapid pickup and conversation happening, but it's definitely evolving and growing, and so that's a great thing.
Let's talk a minute about a code of ethics. Are companies' values different from a code of ethics? Do you see a difference between them? There's a little bit of discussion going on between corporate values and really identifying and describing those values, and those who rely on a set code.
Yes, well, a code of ethics is worth about the value of the paper on which the code of ethics is printed.
Okay.
Even assuming that the code of ethics that piece of paper has been put up on the wall. What it really matters is behaviors. And behaviors are driven by the DNA of the organization. So I'm sure Enron had a code of ethics, but it didn't have behaviors which corresponded to those code of ethics. And many companies, many organizations in all parts of the world have codes of ethics which they don't live by. Values more describe the DNA of the organization and the guiding principles that will drive behaviors. But even then, not all companies which have a list of values live by those values. So the truly authentic companies are those that have values that everybody understands and lives by and that guide behaviors, and a code of ethics that are drawn from those values and correspond to them, and that people follow because they want to follow it, and with the right prescriptions in place so that to make sure that you try and catch the odd number of people inside an organization that are not going to follow them. So if you look at the companies that we think about as really doing this stuff well, take Johnson & Johnson, right? They have a credo. It's came out during the Depression. It was written by Robert Wood Johnson II during the Depression. They live by that credo. They take business, that describes their values. They take business decisions by their credo. When Tylenol happened, the company took the business decision that they didn't need to take because it's what the credo told them was their values, and they were committed to living by their values. And that's a company that you think of as being truly authentic. But it's authentic because it knows who it is and it behaves the same way. Here's, I think, the thing about public relations, right? There's a lot of the term public relations and the description of the profession has become an ugly term. people use the term disparagingly, and they talk about us in disparaging terms. And why is that? It's because we've allowed that to happen. Firstly, because we've allowed people to get away from the definition of what public relations was, that your connection, your relationship with publics, and equated to publicity. We should never have allowed that to happen, right? But then, inside the profession, if you can call it that, we've let people do bad things, and we've let them get away with it, and we haven't called them on the carpet, and we haven't stood up for ourselves. So when people talk about PR equals spin, equals lying, we almost never say, hang on a second, that's not the profession that we belong to. So so from that, I think that as a profession, we need to stand up more for who we are and what we do and the value that we bring. And when you think about Arthur Page, he represented those sorts of values. We need to do a better job of that. But then each of us as individuals has to be really sure about what do I stand for, what's my DNA, and do I behave every day when there's a gray area. Do I take the right decision because it's the right decision? And if more of us were sure about that, I think the reputation of the profession that we serve would be much higher than it is today. And we have an opportunity to turn it around, but it requires each of us to take the challenge.
The United States is experiencing a crisis of trust in business. And we've touched on this a little bit in a variety of different ways, but how do you, with everything that you've said, how in the world are corporations really going to handle the challenge? And are we starting to turn the corner yet, or do we have a long way to go?
Oh, I think we have a long way to go to rebuild trust in business, not just in the United States, but globally. The decline in trust has been ongoing. We've seen it spike a little bit in the last year or so with the financial meltdown, the recession, depression, if you like. It's high on people's radar screen right now, but if you look at the trends, for example, on the Edelman Trust Report, generally speaking, there's been a continuous decline in trust in business over the last many decades. So what needs to change? What needs to happen to change that? Well, in part, it's business needs to change. Business needs to earn trust. You don't get it conferred on you by right, and you don't get it conferred on you because you take out an ad. You get it conferred on you because you earn it. And you earn it every minute of every day with everybody that you relate to, starting with your employees. Right now, employees are the most important driver of trust in an organization because they're the people that are believed in and listened to by everybody, every other stakeholder group, way more often and with much more credibility than the CEO and senior management. So start with employees. Are you delivering on your promise to employees? And are you treating them with respect and dignity? And are you listening to what they say and adjusting accordingly? Or are you deaf and in command and control mode, in which case you'll never earn back your trust? Because if that's how you treat employees, who are your most important stakeholder group, how are you going to treat your customers and your suppliers? So I think it comes back to how do companies behave. There's an increasing power imbalance, and what we know from the work that was done with the Business Roundtable Institute of Ethics and the Arthur W. Page Society, and the report that recently came out, evening out that imbalance of power is a really important driver of trust, and that's got to come from how businesses behave and how they deliver on their commitments to society generally and individual stakeholder groups in particular. So once a company starts to think of itself as having a long-term future in a sustainable way, then it begins to behave with all stakeholder groups differently. Marks and Spencer in the UK is a really good example, I think, of a company that says there is no plan B. We have to be sustainable. And that means we have to change the relationship that we have with customers and suppliers and every other aspect of our the environment in which we operate in order to build a long-term future. So in part, as companies, I think, begin to think that way, and not be driven all the time just by the quarterly result, important though that is, and all of this is like what we must drive business outcomes. As communicators, we've got to drive business outcomes, not just communication outcomes. The communications really don't matter if they're not driving some sort of business outcome, but we've got to help our companies see things differently and then behave differently, and then we'll help rebuild the trust.
Jack O'Dwyer wrote an article on Peter Sussman's disapproval of what he claims is the cozy relationship between the press and Page Society in the PR seminar. Does the public relations industry foster inappropriate relationships with members of the media?
Well, I think Jack O'Dwyer has a very cozy relationship with many of us in the PR industry, and we all respect and like that relationship. He's one of the industry's characters, and every industry needs some characters like Jack O'Dwyer. He's always a good person to have a drink with at a function. No, I don't think the industry fosters an inappropriate relationship with the media at all. And in fact, the relationship with the media now is incredibly professional. It used to be, I guess, that PR people used to be able to wine and dine reporters and maybe influence what they wrote about or who they covered. Those days are pretty much gone. You can't buy a reporter a cup of coffee anymore. So what are reporters interested in their relationship with a public relations professional? I think they're interested in a lot of things. Firstly, reporters have way too much to do, and they're way too underpaid, and right now they're in an industry that has no clear sense of its future. So they're in an incredibly difficult position. And the more that we can help them with that, the more that we can make their life easier, the better. Second, we absolutely have to be truthful and honest in our dealings with the media, individually and collectively. So the relationship with a specific journalist is you have to give them a point of view. They're interested in the point of view of you or the company that you work for or represent. And you have to give them that point of view in an honest and truthful way. But that's what they're after. Nothing untoward about that.
Is there anything else that you'd like to talk about that I haven't covered or you haven't covered? And this will be on our website. There'll be future generations who may take a listen and a look-see and say,
sure. So this is the most amazing time to be starting off in this profession right now. This profession is in a state of complete revolution, and we don't really see where the revolution is going to take us. But if you think about some of the themes in the authentic enterprise, globalization, new stakeholder groups being empowered in ways that they never have before, the impact of technology, 1 billion cell phones sold a year, still in today's climate, most of them now with cameras, and now increasingly video cameras and data links. So each year there's 1 billion new publishers, television stations being created, and radio stations and newspapers being created. So so the impact on what we do, it's clear that we are no longer in control, if we ever were, of the message. I don't think we ever were, but we like to think we were. Not anymore. So there's this revolution happening where we are even more important than we've ever been in terms of the contribution that the profession can make to society and to the businesses and organizations that we serve or work for. And there's a whole new world of the profession just waiting to be built. And if you're starting in the profession today, because all the ground rules have gone, and the environment in which we've been operating since Arthur Page's time is shifting underneath our feet. And so we can create a new vision of the profession and a new way that we work and a new ability to deliver value And the people coming into the profession now are the people who are going to do that, right? So us old fogies, our day has gone. It's the revolution that's happening now that the new people can come into. And the interesting thing about it is, if you look at the principles, the Arthur Page principles, which the society, the founders, who many of whom are very much associated with the Centre, that they codified 26 years ago when the organization began, the sayings of Arthur Page into the Page principles. So they're ideas that he had that are 60 years old, or longer, 80 years old, right? They're more valid and more true and more relevant today than they ever were. And if you think about what's happening in this unknown, uncharted territory that we're all in, but if you look at the Page principles, and if you follow the Page principles, you've got a guiding compass to go by. They're really powerful and really relevant. And I'm just fascinated by the way that these ideas that he had back then, every day and every week and every year, get more powerful and more relevant than before.
Wow, very good.
All right.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. This was wonderful.